Hey, welcome everybody. This is John Paul Mendoza. It's a Paul World. We got a great guest for you today. Fantastic guest. I mean, he has weathered apocalyptic storms, two tornadoes. If you've seen Twister with those double tornadoes, cows in the air. I don't know if it's quite that much, but he had to reboot his computer. Anyway, welcome, Michael Beas. Michael, welcome to It's a Paul World. Glad to have you on.
It's good to be here. Thanks for having me today.
So you're going to be at FreedomFest. We're going to be there, and you're going to be talking about a couple of topics. I mean, I know you're a guy who has a lot of different interests, but talk a little bit about what's going to happen at FreedomFest with you. What are the topics or panels and things you're going to be talking about?
Well, the key thing I'm going to be talking about is how do you turn books into bestsellers, right? How do you work with your book's algorithm so that you could get to the #1 list, so you could brand yourself as a #1 best-selling author on Amazon? And as like all things go on Freedom Fest, there's always a little twist to it. So they threw in that little twist of cancel culture in there because I know that's hot, that's what's trending, and that's what people want to know about. What do I do if I write something that's a little, not up the cuff, where people start getting upset and they take your book down and they say, sorry, we can't publish your book anymore. So that's going to be one of the things that I like to talk about is what are your alternatives? And let's say, you're not on the naughty list and you want to keep writing. How do you make it to #1 so you could keep going?
Well, it's kind of interesting to watch this whole evolution, because it used to be that the naughty list is that they had to ship it to you in a plain brown wrapper, and you had to hope that the postal inspector didn't look in at what kind of weird stuff you're going to look at. But now it's thoughts. Okay, right. Oh goodness, you've had these thoughts. So we actually had that problem with getting Remote Work for a Better World up, because we ended up that the first title was Survive the Quarantine, and they wouldn't let us through. And we actually spent several days stupidly, because we thought we could actually talk to Amazon rationally. And of course we ditched that, and we put in Remote Work for a Better World, which was a fine title, and it works, longer term. So, well, excellent. So you're going to be talking about that. By the way, any of you who are aspiring writers, I can tell you that if you are thinking about writing anything, you should definitely come to this session for one really simple reason. Writing a book is really a pain. And it took me 30 years to get my first one. And I had to find a Colombian to help me, which I don't know, Michael, I don't want to give away the formula to that, but that so far has been the perfect, it's worked 100% of the time. Don't swipe that one, because, But Michael, talk about some of the things that happen when people finally get this book written, and then they just sit there, and I guess they think it's build it and they will come. But talk a little bit about what you have to do, to get a book out there.
Well, that's a good question. I mean, the thing is, at any given time, there's 8 million books that you're going up against, right? That's just the nature of the beast. I mean, last year alone, there was 167 million books that were published in the United States alone. So what makes your book different, right? Nobody,
wow.
The hardest part you would think is to write the book, which it is. It's very hard to come up, to have put your creative hat on, put it together, get it formatted, get it live, get it published, get your covers, and then you got to sell it, right? So it's the question is, how do you sell it, right? And over the past 7 years, I've worked on a formula that could really help you develop a better algorithm so that you come up more on the search engines, right? Because Amazon, in essence, is the same as Google. It's a search engine. And there's certain key things that you have to apply to your book so that it populates higher in the search fields, so that you can't put your book next to like a Stephen King or a Ken Follett or a Diana Gabaldon or whatever. Books that are selling, that people
Right.
know the name, their brand names, right? It's like buying Coke
Exactly.
versus Pepsi versus RC. It's how do you get it on the same shelf space as the big players with a very limited amount of budget, right? Because if you go with the top 5, Simon and Schuster, Putnam, Scholastic, whatever, you're going up against people that have $1 million budgets, right?
Right.
So the question is, with a very limited budget, how do you optimize your book's searchability so that you do so? And that's kind of what I'm going to be talking about over there.
Now, how'd you get into this? Because it sounds like it's something that you've developed over time, but it's not like, you didn't wake up one day and say, you know what, I'm going to turn books into Amazon #1 bestsellers. Because I understand you've got a background. Tell us a little bit about your background and your interest in music and what you do there.
Well, that's a good, that's a long, how much time do you have now?
Okay, all right. Hang on. I got to get some more coffee. But yeah, okay.
Geez. Well, long story short, I had retired. I was an executive at Liberty Mutual selling commercial insurance, and I retired at 32. I was very good at it. And I got burnt out. I just got really burnt out. I had a over half a million, $500 million book of business and selling commercial insurance, and I couldn't handle it anymore. It was just too much. So I retired. I moved to South America, long story, and came back over here. Again, long story. And I thought, I love to write. And what do I love writing about? And that was music. So uh, literally at a Panera Bread, I came up with a concept of writing about electronic dance music. And that
Okay.
company that I founded eventually was called Raver Magazine, which is the third largest music magazine in the country.
Mm,
And I started, getting kicked out of everywhere. Nobody would interview me. The company at the time wasn't big, right?
right.
And I was like, I could start a magazine and just write about music. My grandfather was a famous musician. He wrote famous Cuban musician in Florida. He wrote the song Guantanamera, which is
Wow.
big,
I,
big Hall of Fame song. And I said, I can't play a musical instrument. Don't even get me to start, but I could write about it. And as I did that, I wrote my own book. And I thought, like everybody else, oh, I'll just write a book and all of a sudden it'll be a bestseller. And all of a sudden people will come to me. They'll come flocking to me. Well, nobody came. All I heard was crickets all over in the background. That's all I heard. And I said, you know what? Everybody is focused on publishing. Nobody's focused on selling or branding or,
right.
focusing on a book. So that's where the idea came about. And the entrepreneur that I strive to be, that's what we created.
Well, that's a great story. And so you started taking on, you did it for yourself clearly, but then, you ran into a couple of people and, so talk about that initial, you help somebody out and I'm just giving you the lead in because I don't want to steal the thunder, but talk about
No.
somebody who had written a bunch of books and was sitting there going, I got to get a bigger storage locker because I'm stacking them up. And how did you work with that situation?
So through my chief marketing officer, Dar Dowling at the time, she introduced me to a gentleman who she ran into who was having a problem publishing books. His name is Steve Mariotti, who is the founder of Nifty, the network for teaching entrepreneurship. And he's written over 35 books on entrepreneurship. I mean, he's literally one of my mentors. And I didn't really at the time know who he was or whatnot. And my company was around for already 3 years. And I was like, I met him up in Dallas. He had just launched his new book. His publisher did nothing to help him sell a book, and they'll publish you, but try to sell it is a whole other animal.
Sure.
Most publishers will try to just sell you your own book, and so you can resell it to everybody else, which is a brilliant idea from a business standpoint, but from a personal standpoint, I don't agree with it. So
Right.
I met with Steve. Steve and I sat down and we started going over what he's done, what he's doing, and we turned his book into a bestseller. We got him, 75 interviews. We, heck, even got a billboard in Times Square. And, he was so fascinated by it, by the whole methodology behind it, that he said, hey, how about I partner up with you? And we really try to influence some change, because if you could take what I do and apply it to books that matter, books that have a deeper meaning, right? Not necessarily your thriller or your romance book or whatever, but books that could really influence change, right? Which is what a lot of the folks at FreedomFest are going to write about, right? We could
Sure.
really make a difference, right? Because nobody has this program that I have. And we partnered up together. 3 years later, here we are.
Well, that's a great story, and it's always interesting when somebody actually goes out and uses the S word, because of course, in my other part of my life is I'm known as Dr. Speed Selling, and I can tell you every single time I get interviewed, people say, well, in the internet age, do you really need to sell something? And I said, listen, they're one of the most famous direct marketing geniuses of all time, Gary Halbert, used to sit up in the front of the audience and would say, sex sells. And so get to a break. And I'm sitting there with Gary and I said, Gary, if sex sells, how come everybody sells it so hard? How come it's so hard to sell it? How come there are guys out on Vegas Strip handing away cards? I mean,
right.
Come on, if this thing just, and he looked at me and said, well, wow, I never thought of it that way. Well, yeah. So you have to really actually go out and sell it. So I commend you, Michael, that's a great thing, because I think most authors are afraid to represent themselves, represent their book, and actually get their ideas out, because that's really the point of it, is that if you spend all that time to do it, you got to get it out there. So, all right, well, that sounds interesting. And so
Thank you.
now you're going to be at Freedom Fest. And have you been to Freedom Fest before?
No, never been. This is my first time. I'm kind of I'm excited and nervous at the same time. Don't know what I mean, I go to festivals all over the world for music. This is the first the festival that I go to that, I'm sure there'll be music there, but it won't be, it's a whole different vibe. So I'm not sure what to expect.
Well, it's going to be it's a different world. I mean, it is a multi-faceted circus of various interests. I mean, you see everybody from, guys who have been hoarding gold seemingly forever, and you got people who are at the Bitcoin bleeding edge to you got survivalists, you've got libertarians, you got you name it, you got it. And it's a very eclectic group, which I think is that's one of the reasons why I go to it every year. And I think you're gonna have a great time. I think you're gonna be a breath of fresh air, especially talking about what people can do to get their message out, because almost all of them, if you give them time, they've got a message that they're trying to get out. So let's take it in a little bit different direction. So obviously you started this, you guys are doing well with this methodology, which, anybody who's out there who says, well, is Michael going to write a book about it? I would suspect that it's complicated enough, and it's something that you actually have a team that puts this together and works on it.
Right.
Is that really the case? So talk a little bit about what that's like to, I come and deliver, my baby to you, which is my book, and you sit there and now you kind of take me through a process. I talk to me about it. Tell me what we're going to do.
Well, the process is simple. So let's say you came on board, one of the first things I got to do is figure out what you've done, where you've been, and where you want to go, right? Because books are like calling cards. They're business cards for the adults. It's I feel like everybody's got a book and everybody's got a message to tell, but there's always a bigger purpose, a deeper meaning to what they want. So it's not
Right.
like you go to our website and just buy something like you're at McDonald's. It's really like how what is it that you want to accomplish, right? So after we figure all that out, right, that's going to be an hour conversation or more. The next thing is how I have to understand your algorithm, what categories you're in, what categories are trending, what
Right.
code we're going to use, and then we set up a promotion date, right? And then I've gotten it down to a science where I could predict the day and time that your book could become a bestseller.
Wow.
And once you become a bestseller and we brand you as a bestseller, that's when the magic starts happening, because not only did you sell some books, but you're also now going to be in the spotlight. You're going to get reviews. You're going to, be teed up. More people are going to want to interview you because now you're different from the other 8 million that are out there, right?
Right.
And that's kind of like the process. And then from there you decide, hey, I want to get awards. I want to get more press. I want to get speaking engagements. I want to do radio tours. I want to, wherever you're at. But it should always be in a way to tell your message, but to also keep supporting your business. So, if you have a radio station and you want to get more listeners, this is a good way, right? If you have a yoga studio and you wrote a book about yoga, but now this is a way because you're the expert in your industry. Now, guess what? You'll have more students join your class. Yeah, and you'll inherently sell more books in the process, but it's really to support everything that you have going on, to grow your persona, because people like to be next to winners, right? I mean, it's just
Absolutely.
crazy. You get an interview and all of a sudden all your friends who never liked or commented you on Facebook, all of a sudden everybody wants to be your friends, right? It's nuts. It's bizarre, but that's the world and the culture we live in. So that's what I do. As
That's
Billy the
it.
Kid said, I make you famous.
So you're going to bring some of that magic to South Dakota, and you're going to do that. So, well, that sounds great. And do you already know which slots you've got, so people can start circling their
Yes. I believe I have one key spot, and it's going to be on the 22nd, I believe. The 22nd at like
Okay.
2:00. It's cancel culture and turning your books into #1 bestsellers on Amazon.
Well,
So,
excellent. And then,
check it
so
out.
how does somebody get a hold of you? Assuming, now there may be a couple people who are watching this who are not going to come to Freedom Fest. And by the way, we're going to give you a little, we're going to chastise you right now for, lack of commitment to the cause and all that. But anyway, how would they get a hold of you, Michael?
The easiest way to get a hold of me would probably, there's two ways really. You could go to atlaselitepartners.com. and just fill out the form and reach out to us. Or, uh, my wife who's probably watching this is probably gonna laugh, but you could actually DM me on my Instagram, which is Beas, Beas, Michael.
Okay.
That's kind of the fastest way to get a hold of me.
There you
Um,
go.
that's the direct way, but definitely start with the atlaselitepartners.com, and from there we could always hit up the DM.
Excellent. All right. Now, for all of you who are wondering right now whether or not you should be going to Freedom Fest, and if you have enjoyed this conversation with Michael Beas, which I have, I mean, as somebody who has wanted to get a book out, got a book out in the worst possible time, and and just works every day to try to sell more stuff like that, this was great for me. I was really excited. My brother flagged this and said, "You got to talk to Michael Beas." He's like, "You got to do it. Get the booker to get Michael Beas." So we got the one and only Michael Beas that I know of. I mean, unless there's a doppelganger out
there's
there
a
or
Beasley.
something.
If you like basketball, there's a Michael Beasley, but
No, different guy.
he's a little taller. But yeah, I mean.
So it's not too late, by the way, for you to get to Freedom Fest. It's July 21st through the 24th. I'm going to give you directions in just a second how to get there, so that way you can't get lost. But go check it out. And we have, of course, a link, and you can do all that stuff. And you get to meet people like Michael Beas. Here's the best part about Freedom Fest. I know this is Michael's first time. If there wasn't a fair use problem when we post this, I'd be playing Like a Virgin from Madonna right now for him. But we can't do that because just saying that. I can almost hear the black helicopters coming for us. So just do this. Go sign up, come to Freedom Fest, and you'll get to meet Michael and so many other speakers. You won't even have time to meet everybody, but it's a very interesting, very cool environment. And if you have any leanings whatsoever towards liberty, freedom, and expression, and you have a book that you've always said, you know what, I've got a story. Somebody said I should write a book. You're going to want to talk to Michael because he knows how to do this. And I'm going to be really blunt. You don't. And I can tell you that from being around a lot of different people. Very few people, if he can predict the day that you're going to be an Amazon bestseller, I'm going to be talking to him. I'll bring a racing for him. So maybe he can pick a couple races or dogs or something like that. I don't know if it works quite the same way, but it might. So but you'll never know if you don't go to Freedom Fest, July 21st to 24th. Let me tell you how to get there. Simple directions. By the way, you don't even need Google. This is what you do. Is you locate Interstate 90. Interstate 90, easy. Now, if you don't know how to locate Interstate 90, you don't know the interstate system, go back and find your fourth grade teacher, get a refund, because you should know how to get around the United States. First, you get to Interstate 90. You determine, are you east or west of Rapid City, South Dakota? If you are east of Rapid City, head west until you get to the wide spot in the road, which is Rapid City, South Dakota. If you're west, just do this. And I have to go all the way through it because most people don't understand. Then you go east until you get to the wide spot in the road in South Dakota. That's called Rapid City. And I know people in Rapid City. So I'm not insulting him. I'm just saying that's the easiest way to get there. There's lots of other ways, but you should be there because somebody like Michael Beas is going to be there, and it's going to be a great time. So Michael, any last final words before we wrap up this?
No, I think this was a great time. I can't wait to see everybody there at the event, and definitely come check it out. I hear it's going to be, everybody that I've ever talked to is saying that Freedom Fest is the place to be. So come check it out. We'll have a good time.
It's great fun. All right, our special guest has been the one, the only Michael Beas, the man who has taken people to Amazon #1 bestseller, can predict when that's going to happen. We'll see his other prediction things. We're going to be sealing some envelopes and testing them maybe a little bit at Freedom Fest. We might have to do it after a couple of adult beverages, but we might get there. But you should definitely want to come. Michael, thank you very much for being with us today. And I look forward to meeting you personally at Freedom Fest.
That sounds great. Thank you so much for having me. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.